Welcome back to the League Digest. This week we're starting things off with the patch 8.15 hotfix that just went live. From there we take a look at the upcoming champion roadmap to see what champion changes are on the horizon. Then, speaking of changes, we take a look at the upcoming tank changes coming in patch 8.16. Lastly, we end on a story discussing the amazing miracle run Cloud9 have had in their second half of the split. I'm Sushix with the League Digest. Let's talk. So starting off this week, we have a rumoured hotfix coming in patch 8.15. This supposedly to tone down the power of Fizz since his recent buffs seem to have overshot the mark, and to give Akali players more handicaps to deal with her steep learning curve. No numbers were discussed in the tweet released by Riot Maple, but they expected the patch to be deployed on Monday, August 6th, but it never made it to the live servers. So at this point, we're not entirely sure why the fix wasn't released on the live servers. But a piece of this tweet leads us to believe that the fix wasn't necessary for the upcoming weekend, and instead we may be seeing it on a future patch. Moving on August 6th, a new champion roadmap was released. Written by the lead producer of Champions Reeve, it detailed the upcoming plans for champions for the remainder of the year. Today we'll be providing you guys with an abridged version of what these champion reworks and changes seem to be. First of all, there's a Nunu rework around the corner. A champion that honestly hasn't got much love as of late. With a more modernized kit to bring him up to standard with the current meta, he'll hopefully prove to be more viable, each ability able to be used to play around his ult, which remains unchanged. Along with this, it seems that Consume also won't be changed. However, the other changes will provide a new, distinct playstyle to breathe some new life into the champion we all know and love. In the next section, aptly titled Bringing Ezreal Out of the Museum, it seems that the Protocol Explorer is next in line for a rework, albeit a little bit smaller. The only part of his kit being changed is Essence Flux, which has left players dissatisfied for a while now, likely being removed in favor of something more in line with the rest of his persona. Along with this, he's also next to receive a much needed visual rework, accompanied with new voice lines as well. This rework is likely to take place later on in the year. The last mentioned rework is that of both Morgana and Kayle, the sisters having intertwined lore that will be incorporated thematically into their kits and visuals upon being updated. Riot's aim here is to bind their narratives together and give them a stronger place in the League universe. Bigger changes are anticipated for Kayle, with Morgana only having slight adjustments to her W and passive. However, these reworks aren't going to take place until next year at the least. In terms of new champions, there were two that were mentioned, a colourful new mage currently in hiding, and another new champion locked away with no release date in sight. There's a few things that can be taken away from this. In terms of a new mage coming out soon, the various mentions of hiding when referring to them suggest a potential theme for the character. For the champion locked away, it could refer to their lore, or potentially the kit itself. Although two contrasting ideas, it's always a pleasure to see how Riot continues to expand on the League universe and bring in many much more needed personalities and different quirks. Hopefully we'll be hearing some news on this new mage champion real soon. Moving on, from the roadmap of the future to the changes of the present, tanks seem to be next on Riot's agenda for major role changes. In a forum post released by gameplay producer Maple Nectar, each tank will be finding new ways to scale each of their defenses unique to their champion, while generally powering them up in the meta where there's been a distinct lack of tanks. The champions mentioned for change were Amumu, Leona, Maokai, Nautilus, Rammus, Sion, and Tahm Kench. Most of the changes revolve around giving these tanks more defensive utility to survive jungling after the changes in 8.10. Whether it'll be through increased base stats like Maokai's magic resistance and move speed buff, stronger early game shields for Nautilus, or scaling damage reduction on Amumu, these changes should allow tanks to not fall drastically behind their carry counterparts in the jungle and still have some relevance in the meta. As for support tanks, Leona is having a bit of her power redistributed so that her Eclipse isn't all powerful in the early game, but scales into an insane burst of stats in the late game. Only Tahm Kench has been seeing play recently due to the usefulness of his Devour and how generally obnoxious he can be in lane. His anti-fun Devour is receiving a major nerf with the cooldown doubling at rank 1. This allows for more counterplay in lane if you land a good trade, because the window to punish Tahm and his laner is a lot larger. However, the cooldown is halved on enemy casts, meaning that you can still punish your foes if you get the full 3 stacks on them. With these tank changes, hopefully it means we'll be seeing a bit of a mix-up with jungle and support metas. Which of these changes seems to be your favourite, and which tank champion would you like to see gain the most attention from Riot? Let us know in the comments down below. Lastly, starting out the first half of the summer split with a whopping 2 wins, 6 losses, Cloud9 has faced numerous roster swaps over the course of the NALCS. Infamously, players like Sneaky, Jensen, and Smoothie were all benched at the start of the split due to allegedly poor mentalities, going on to have several academy players take their place. As the weeks went on, several members were swapped in and out until finally settling on their final roster in week 5. Currently, Cloud9's supposed settled lineup is Licorice, Blabber, Jensen, Sneaky, and Zazel. The only 2 original members to drop are Smoothie and Svenskeren, the former moving to Echo Fox and the latter staying on Cloud9 Academy. The team agreed that this form had the most communication and success compared to other iterations, and the numbers don't disprove that. Their debut game was against first place team Liquid, who they beat in a rather convincing fashion. However, they dropped a pretty disappointing defeat against Optic Gaming and Power of Evil's Talon with Smite strategy. Since then, however, they've went undefeated in the last 2 weeks and stand at a 7-7 record, somehow placing them in 4th place and in the running for playoffs. It seems almost scripted with how perfect it's been working out for the boys in white and blue. First, fallen from grace, they rose from the ashes and soared straight through the standings and have done the unthinkable. They've really made a full turnaround for themselves, solidifying their spot as potential contenders for a spot at the NALCS finals. Now, with one of the North American veteran organizations coming online, will we be able to see TSM or CLG find something to pull themselves back into playoffs contention? Some of us can only hope, but as we've seen, anything is possible. We'll be sure to track the action as it happens here at the League Digest. Unfortunately, that does bring us to the end of this week's episode of the League Digest. If you guys like what we do, the best thing you can do to support us is the Patreon link in the description down below. Check it out if you have a moment. And we also have social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Check those out if you want to see what we're up to behind the scenes and what's going on when videos are being released. Until next time, I'm Sushix with the League Digest, and I'll talk to you guys later.